Hello and welcome to What Makes Difference, and we are delighted to have Tom and Adam from Sabre Warrior. Welcome, gents.
Lovely to meet you. Thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, pleasure to be here.
Yeah. Can you tell us a bit about why you're here and the background as to why you started Sabre Warrior, please?
Yeah, sure. So the reason we're here is to really raise awareness of Sabre Warrior UK and what it is we do and who we do it for. And we have an upcoming retreat, which we'll obviously talk a little bit more about later, but in October. So our first inaugural cohort will be launching in October. So the main reason is to be here, just to raise awareness, let people know, what we're about. But Sabre Warrior was originally founded in America in 2012, and Jake Clark, who was the founder, he started that in Malibu in California, of all places, and somehow it's ended up in Portsmouth in the UK as our HQ, nearest city anyway. And yeah, it's been quite a journey, quite a ride. And I came across Sabre Warrior back in 2021, 22, and eventually was given the go ahead to be able to bring it back to the UK, and here we are.
For anybody who's listening, can you give us a bit of background in terms of the Sabre Warrior program? Because as you rightly said, it's been going for quite a while and very successful in America. It's got a very strong following base. It's a very strong presence in terms of the veteran support landscape. So what drew you to that in the first place? Because you've obviously brought it to the UK. So what caused that journey, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, well, I served. I joined up pre 9/11, and I was a Royal Marine, and I passed out of training in around June of 2001. And from there, I witnessed 9/11 happen in my first unit, deployed. But just before deployment, my unit deployed. I had a mental breakdown, essentially. So the peak experience of training, and then coming back down to earth in reality of impending war, coming to the sort of realization that I joined the Royal Marines mainly as a way to sort of prove something to my dad. So it was connected to my childhood in many ways, having been brought up by my mother, and my mum and dad split up when I was 2. And so there was all of that as a background, and I had quite a severe acute mental breakdown, attempted suicide to be saved by a fellow Marine who found me and essentially saved my life. So that was really the seed point. And ever since, I've said that I've been in the suicide prevention game since 2001. What happened was it was a rapid recovery at that point within the uniform as well. So it wasn't like I was kicked out or anything. I rehabilitated within the Marines and went on to have a pretty decent career. But ever since that moment, I had the awareness and a capacity, I guess, to sort of pattern recognition, mental health struggles, and I saw it as a sort of spectrum and a following sort of incremental steps until somebody arrives at that possibility of an option of suicide, and I kind of, today I have a relationship with that experience as a sort of I don't know, a gift in a way, and so it put me very much front and center to sort of be able to serve others. And over the years, I left the Marines 2009, went into the security industry, but very quickly began to realize that teaching was something that I loved. So I trained as a life coach. Eventually, I trained as a hypnotherapist, and immersed myself in Jungian psychology. And so all of these pieces started to sort of play out, and realize that I could serve others in this sort of capacity. And around about COVID time, I committed 100% to my coaching and sort of formally building a structure around that, a program, company, etc., and began to sort of reach out to veterans, and quickly realized that I was missing a piece of the puzzle. I didn't fully understand the picture, the extent of the problem, we could say, afflicting veterans. And I hadn't articulated exactly my service at that point either. And so I opened up my coaching to non-veterans, everyone but veterans. And it quickly became popular and people were using it. But there was still this nagging thing. There was still this, I really do want to serve veterans. I don't want to charge them money because that didn't feel right at the time. So I began to sort of write about it in LinkedIn, spread the word, and my sort of inquiries as to what this thing that we were missing, because PTSD at the time in particular was, tended to be treated as a sort of, one pill for that particular ill. And it was very sort of, oh, well, you've got PTSD. That's the diagnosis. And you've got to live with that. And that's how it is. And a lot of veterans I was talking to were having that experience where, they were doing all the counseling, they were doing all the different modalities, and nothing really was getting under the thing and solving it at the root cause. And so that was where I was at. I was having conversations with many people at the time, psychiatrists to serving, even high-ranking officers, and trying to get to the bottom of it. And then somebody reached out to me and they said, I've been following your work. I think you need to reach out to Save a Warrior in America and talk to Jake Clark. And this somebody was the former CEO of Save a Warrior in America, Terry Scariot. Great gentleman, very successful businessman. And he's been a sort of an angel really in all of this, in that he's always there, he's always watching, he's always liking comments, he's observing all the time, guiding me, steering me when I get too political. He's like, you're gonna be careful because of the donors, you don't want to offend too many donors because they won't, you want to fund Save a Warrior. So he steers me, he's my guardrails and overwatch, and a mentor really in many ways. And so I went to Save a Warrior, and they articulated for the first time this idea of the thing under the thing, and how there's a sort of 80-20 Pareto distribution here. So if you get 100 people join up, 80% of them would typically have a pretty decent childhood, right? We could say, and we can categorize that with an ACE score, which you can go into. But the 20% would have had a pretty horrific experience growing up. And so they're going into the service with complex PTSD. And then they go on and serve, and they will experience things in service, in the line of duty. And whether that's a moral injury, whether that's PTSD, and that all gets conflated. And when it comes to treating and supporting and helping them, it gets conflated. And that's the bit that I wasn't quite understanding at the time, and I do now. And being able to sort of have the conversation where we can separate those two and address the root cause of their initial childhood experiences that essentially distort their truth and their essence and who they are, and in their purest form, like who they are. That distortion happens very early on in childhood. Something happens, they make it mean something about themselves, and then that distorts the truth about themselves and their place in the world. And so it becomes a pretty existential sort of crisis of meaning and personality and identity, and then that quickly spirals into some kind of adaptive, maladaptive, survival-based personality, which unless corrected, will go on to create all manner of problems as an adult. And so, you conflate all of that in with service, moral injury, even traumatic brain injuries as well. On top of all of that, then you've got the recipe for somebody that is drifting very hard off that authentic center line of who they are. And the end point of that drift, if left unchecked, is suicide. And that was all explained and demonstrated to me when I went to America and sat in the seat and received the program. And it blew me away. It convinced me that this was something that was effective, not just for veterans and first responders, but to the human condition. And we just so happen to channel it towards veterans and first responders at the moment. And who knows what will happen in the future. But for now, our focus is on veterans and first responders. So kind of a long-winded response to your good question, but yeah, it's been a journey. So I think it's worthwhile,
There's a lot in there, Adam, that I'd love to discuss with you further. Before we do that, though, I wanted to say hi to Thomas and thank you for coming along and ask you how you got involved in this as well, because just as like Rich and I work together, then you're obviously a big part of the Save a Warrior too.
Yeah, thanks. So yeah, my entrance into Save a Warrior starts after Adam's. He started. He had his conversation with America, flying over there and coming back, and was setting up a webinar on LinkedIn to beat the drum. And I think that there's a QR code in the bottom right, raising funds to sponsor a seat for the US program. So he's the UK ambassador for Save a Warrior US. And I saw that a flight sergeant of mine was attending this, guy that I've got a lot of respect and a lot of time for, Dickie Pyshawn. And he was going to, turn up to this webinar that was talking about suicide. And I was like, well, if he's going, then I should turn up. I should go in as well. So I clicked a button to attend, messaged Adam directly and said, look, here's my background. Here's what I can do in terms of marketing. Can I help? And try and get as many bums on the seat as possible to attend. So that was like the first ever contact with Save a Warrior that I had. But the more and more I looked at it, and the more I stared at this great big, shield of a Marine taking a knee, which is the US logo, the more it sort of started to just chip away at this nagging secret that I'd put in a box down here somewhere that I'd never tell anyone. The fact that I too didn't value my life, and in 2015 I questioned whether I should be here or not. And I've always had this nagging something about me I didn't like, and I didn't want to be here. So it just started to chip away ever so slightly, ever so slowly at this question inside me, until one day, driving back from this place in Cornwall, I'm sat in the car. This man Adam sat on my left. I'm driving, obviously, and the first time I ever vocalized out loud was the fact that I tried to kill myself with my car, was to that guy there. And it felt like I at that point I hadn't been to Save a Warrior in America, but it was just this lift, this little outward breath to a trusted man, someone that could hold on to that and not give me any sort of like comfort or there or try and sort of like make sense of it, but just witness it and just say, yeah, I've got you, buddy, keep going. So yeah, it's been a hell of a journey, to say the least. It's absolutely my purpose now to deliver and continue the delivery, and to ensure that the quality of the delivery is it matches what's coming from the US in every single way, and continues that extremely high success rate at curing suicide.
Can I pick up on a word you used there, Thomas?
Please.
And then I'm probably going to hand over to Rich, because I think you've got something you wanted to say as well, Rich. And that word was witness. Because this is Suicide Awareness Month. And I think sometimes there is a power to being open and sharing that experience that cannot be underestimated. And often the sharing of something that we hold really secret actually is a witnessing for others, but it's also permission giving for others. Because the reason I like the word witness is because it comes without judgment. It's just observation. It's a space keeping that creates room for somebody to share without any judgment, without any recrimination, without any rushing to help, just to listen and be there. And that's sometimes what the sharing of an experience does too, is it creates a space that is an invitation to somebody to say, I'm okay to tell you these things too, because I will witness for you. I will sit beside you while you share, without rushing to fix, without rushing to judge, without rushing to offer an opinion. I will just be here in that moment with you. So I really like that word witness. I just wanted to pick up on that, Thomas.
Exactly what you said. Yeah, that's it's a good bit, and we sort of communicate that bit quite early on in the 72-hour experience. That should I be sat, experience something coming out and crying my eyes out, I probably don't need someone to come and put an arm around me and they're there and comfort. That it's just me working through that emotion that's coming through. Maybe putting an arm around and that sort of like comfort piece withholds that movement of emotion coming out. So yeah, just a witness, just to watch and acknowledge safely with a trusted individual, someone that's safe. Yeah, it's a good way to do it.
Yeah, and I'd like to bring some back to what Adam was saying about how there's a reinforcement within the community about post-traumatic stress. And there was a breakfast club quite recently, and they were talking about they went to this workshop run by a very large mental health military charity. And in that process, they're all telling everybody about their own stories. So everybody's listening to that. Then they will end up crying, and people are thinking, God, glad I hadn't gone through what they've experienced. So there's that old comparison and all that sort of stuff going on. And then at the end of it, so they're crying, but they're at that point going, oh, this is it. So they believe there's that belief, a reinforced belief of, I've got to live with my post-traumatic stress. I have this and I have that, rather than looking at it and going, what makes a difference of moving past that, getting hold of the likes of What Makes a Difference, getting hold of the likes of Save Warrior and the other organisations who use different modalities who can break that point and where people can move past.
Well, I think that's the difference between calling it a disorder and an injury, is that actually, it's funny because as you were talking there, Rich, I was reflecting the conversation that when we first met and spoke with Adam, where we were talking about the fact that sometimes our bodies and our brains are in constant conversation with us, but we just don't always listen. They have a limited way of communicating with us, and that's sometimes through our experiences, through the choices we're making. But when we learn to listen, whether that's to the patterns of our childhood that we learn as coping strategies or the models that we witnessed, that we learn to observe and notice, the act of noticing and the act of inquiry that comes after that, the question to self of why, is incredibly powerful, moving you beyond your current experiences, because until you notice, until you acknowledge, you're literally stuck and locked into the current legend.
Yeah. There's so many patterns that I think are always worth articulating and talking about and sharing, so people can have these waypoints in what can otherwise be a very stressful experience when we experience PTS, right? So the darkness, those moments, and so to have these waypoints to use a military term, reorg, and find ourselves. And one of the patterns is people coming to us tend to exhibit consistent patterns, and one of them is stuckness. and the other one is numbing, typically combined. So there's a stuckness in a story, in a loop, right? It's the same thing, different, better, in order to stuckness, doing. More tools, more coping stuff, more strategies, more this, more better, different, and there's a stuckness about it. And this story about the war and how it got them there and the experience that they happen is a big narrative and it's a mythology. So there's that. That's one pattern, and the underlying pattern as well is numbing, because in that initial distortion of your truth, when something happens to you when you're a child, or there is an absence of something that should have happened but didn't, it creates initial distortion. But it's not the truth. That's not truly who you are. But you make it think that you are unlovable. You know, you're broken in some way. You're alone. You're helpless. You know, those things we make it mean in those early experiences, and that initial distortion causes a drift away from who we actually are, and that's really painful. And the pattern here is, it's painful not in a logical sense. It's painful at a soul, you know, in the background, nagging, something's off kind of sense. And because it's so intangible, you can't put your hands on it. You can't, there it is. That's the thing. It's right back there. Something feels off. And then when we have, for example, a drink, it takes the edge off. So the numbing is the other pattern. So we numb that thing. In the numbing process, we lose our sensitivity that you're speaking about, Ali. You know, that inability to communicate two ways, you know, listen to our bodies. What is it actually trying to say? What is my intuition trying to tell me? And we lose that subtle realm, as I call it. And you know, as a consequence of the numbing. So you're absolutely right in that we have to sort of arrive at a place of being able to hear those subtle signals and signs and communications that we have internally. But it's very, very, very challenging, difficult, if not impossible, to do that if we are emotionally numbing endogenously, exogenously, through chemical addiction or otherwise. And so those two patterns there, I just want to articulate them just so people have these sort of waypoints of like, oh yeah, I recognize that. That's what's happening for me. And the program really is about day one. Within the first 3 hours, 3 to 4 hours, you are going to have a very clear understanding of the 1, 2, 3, 4 step of what got them to where they are sitting in that seat. And you're going to have a very, very articulated right in front of you. And it's going to stare at you throughout the whole of the program as we move along. But having the ability to recognize the patterns like that, it just gives us waypoints, and psychologically, we no longer feel lost because we know where we are on the map of our experience. And so, you know, that's the fundamental sort of initial experience at Save a Warrior to be expected. And it's not what you think it is. That's the thing. It's a very novel approach to this problem. And it's not what you think it is. And that's, you know, we keep that a secret because the novelty aspect of it actually is part and parcel of, it's the secret sauce that makes it successful. I would say. I know it's a bit elusive, but I'll leave it on that cliffhanger.
Yeah, so a few years ago, I went on probably it's one of the best charities now, unfortunately closed down because people were not attending on it. It was called ABRH, Future for Heroes, and that was up in Lake District. And so they would ask people to go back and return courses they couldn't fill the seats. But people who had returned to those courses had gone, well, it kind of mythos had gone. They know what to expect after each event and what's going to happen next. So they were kind of not fully themselves or fully involved in the whole process. They had to stand back a bit. And I'm guessing that's a similar thing of what you're saying there. If people find out about oh, you're going to experience X, Y, and Z. You're going to go do this, that, and the other. It's kind of like, well, I understand what's going on, so I'm not going to bother turning up.
Yeah, and it's
Does that
sorry.
leave room in for assumption then, so that people come with an assumption and a preconceived idea of an outcome, and therefore, as a result, what you're really looking to do is have them come as cleanly as they possibly can into the experience with no previous beliefs, judges, or expectations. They have no clue. In a way, it's as honest as they can be in that experience.
And
Yes,
imagine
and
watching
there
the
is a
Titanic
process.
movie. Imagine watching the Titanic movie, knowing what was going to happen at the end. You know, if you knew what the bang was, it removes the transformation.
Mhm.
It's it's not a surprise, but it's like it's the big reveal, and that it happens at different times in the 72 for the individual. Me, believe it or not, it was H-hour minus 5 minutes. Like no words had even been said. I just stood in the queue and I was like, there it is. I get it. And then everything after that was like, I was on full receive, and I could probably recite word for word the entire 72 hours. I've never listened to anything so intently in my life. So yeah, it's a great bit of kit.
Yeah, and I think because it is group and people know it is a group thing that's going on, what's also very powerful about group is the fact that you're recognizing that there's other people in a similar situation that you are. So there's that kind of shared bonding, there's that shared kind of understanding that everybody has amongst each other without having to say anything.
Yep. There is an AA saying, which I haven't got down yet verbatim. I'm not very good at remembering sentences, but it's along the lines, and Tom, you might be able to help me, but I think it's a problem shared in the right circles, as you say, is something, when you're witnessed in that way, is transformational. And yeah, that's very much the power of the group settings, amongst other things. Yeah.
I think sometimes when I'm working with people, the power of that moment comes in realizing that it's not something that I am intrinsically flawed with, that this is in some ways a community experience for people. Therefore, it's not something that is at fault with me. And it allows a putting down of a lot of sense of guilt, a sense of less than, that says this is something that happened to me. This is not something that I am. I am not intrinsically flawed. Because I was playing with the idea of belief versus truth there as everyone was talking. Because quite often I think the challenge is that we pick up beliefs about ourselves. But beliefs are different from truths. And the beliefs are often coloured by the opinions and the scripts of other people, of other things round about us, or by almost like the assumptions and the follow-on logic that we are forced, or we think we are forced to make about in order to make sense of a situation. If this is true, then it must be because our brains are pre-programmed to find the logic in the situation. They have to find the reason. That's what we look for. That's one of the biggest challenges sometimes when we can't is living with a why. So we will look for the solution, we will look for the cause, and if we can't find it externally, then it must be us.
Well,
and that becomes the belief.
I'd add on to that, Ali, is people buy with emotion, then they justify everything, all the actions afterwards with logic as to why they did buy that product.
Yeah, and that's that belief. Yeah. And truth piece is looking for the reason and the rationale and the justification, rather than actually that point where, and I've watched it with people, it's one of my favourite moments when I'm working with somebody, where you're sitting with them and you know that their internal truth has fundamentally shifted or been revealed for the first time. There's something really quite magical about that. You can see it when something fundamentally shifts that you know is impacting everything else. because they've let go of something.
Yeah, it's a great distinction to make. The transient beliefs that we accumulate is like a sort of like a deep well of water that sort of moves and changes, and it's if we're wedded and married to our beliefs, and if we think the beliefs are who we are, then that's a problem, because then you're limiting yourself to growth and new experiences and possibility. So absolutely agree with that. But I also do believe there is a capital T truth. And, you know, I'm a cultural Christian, whether I like it or not. I used to be an atheist, a self-declared atheist for many years, militant atheist even. I would take glee in trying to convert people. You know, I'm not proud of that, but the Christianity as an influence, whether you're aware of it or not, is an influence in the West mainly. And their trinity of truth, goodness, and beauty have since become my core top three values. Truth being the most important, and it's a capital T truth. It's not your truth or their truth. It's the truth, and it's not a subjective thing. It is there, and in this context, I often describe it as in mythological terms and storytelling, because it enables our brain to sort of grasp it. But essentially, the hero's journey is probably the most empowering and quite interesting sort of discoveries of humans, really. And if anybody has a chance, I strongly recommend reading The Hero with 1,000 Faces, Joseph Campbell's book, where he goes into the mythology of you know, being human, basically. And you know, mythology was something that Carl Jung used as well to articulate his ideas of archetypes and you know, patterns of experience and ideas. And again, all of this enables us to sort of create a terrain, a map with which to locate ourselves, so that we don't feel lost. And then there is, you know, we can attribute a certain sense of direction, purpose, meaning. These are all healing stuff. This is all in the spiritual domain, by the way. And, you know, I know that we looked at you know, this podcast being focused on a particular area. And I think it would be very beneficial to sort of say that, you know, suicidality, as it were, the human phenomena of suicide, is a spiritual problem. And, you know, hopefully we can articulate this is what I'm trying to attempt to articulate now. And that is, you know, the hero's journey asks of every human to embark on, in particular men. There is a distinction between the heroine's journey and the hero's journey. There is a slight distinction. I won't go into that now because it's quite a complex topic. But essentially, you're being asked to embark on your journey. And the journey really is to become self-aware and heal. That's what the core fundamental hero's journey is about. So you're going to go from the known place where you are right now, status quo, well, in your home environment, wherever you find yourself. And for some reason, you're suffering. There are parts of your life that are not working. Okay? You know, if that applies to you, this is a message for you. And so you get a call. You get a call to adventure. Embark on this thing. It's going to be epic. It's going to be really beneficial for you. It's articulated in pop culture all over the place. The best example is Star Wars. Obi-Wan Kenobi gets a visits Luke Skywalker. And he says, come on, we've got this whole, you know, facing the darkness thing and using the force thing that you got. He's like, no, he refuses the call. I've got to stay here with my auntie and uncle because it's safe. And so something happens and you know, he does leave, and you know, the known world is no more for him, gets destroyed, and he embarks. And you cross the threshold moment, and that you go from the known world into the unknown world. It's terrifying. It's terrifying. Symbolically, what that is saying is you're going to go from out there, which you can see, the known world, which you're familiar with, your old patterns, the way it's always been. And I'm asking you to go inward now, to your subconscious, to your unconscious. And in there are things that are, at the moment, terrifying. So that's why you get a mentor that comes along. Merlin, right? Obi-Wan Kenobi, Yoda. These are all Merlins, archetype of Merlin. And he says, right, young Padawan, we've got to go into the deep, dark cave and face this monster, this biggest challenge, this massive trial. and he gets given tools and training and preparation to go and face this thing. And what was basically being articulated there is that we're going to have to go to the wound, the thing under the thing, because it's only through the wound, and the wound is represented as the dark cave. It's only through the wound that we can actually heal. And so when you enter that dark cave, there's a dragon, and that's like the unshareable truth that you've been repressing and hiding and not wanting to look at all of this time, but you're being asked and mentored to do so. And when you do so, you face the dragon diminishes because you voluntarily chosen to go and face the thing under the thing. And the dragon diminishes. Eventually.
Is it an unshareable truth or an unshareable belief?
No, it's because things happen. That's the truth. Okay? Things happen. It's the story we make about it that causes the stuckness.
Mm-hmm.
The thing will never disappear from happening. That happened. And it's what we made it mean that causes us all the problems. And so once we go there, that thing we made it mean is part of the whole mythology of the dragon, right? But what is typically in mythology a dragon guarding? What is he sitting on? What is he guarding?
That's all the treasure, isn't it?
Yeah, gold.
Gold.
Right, so gold, okay. So it's no accident because the alchemist understood that turning the base metal of lead into gold, that's alchemy. But that's not a literal thing. This is mythology. So it's not truth. It's also not a lie. It's a meta-truth, which is more true than truth. It's a meta-truth that is consistently true throughout the ages. It doesn't matter if we're in the dark ages or we're going to be in 2,000 years' time. It will still be true, this pattern. And the alchemical process is turning the base metal of lead, which in emotional alchemy is shame. Shame is the densest known emotion in the human experience, shame. And we take shame out of love when we're young children. Because as you said, Ali, when we're children, we don't have the capacity to say, well, what's being done to me is wrong. No, what we do is, oh my God, I rely on my parents 100%. This is happening to me. That must mean that I'm the bad one. So I'll take that lump of lead, of shame. I'll carry that with me because we love unconditionally our caregivers. That's how we're programmed. So we have to deal with that human phenomena. We have to deal with that. And the way to deal with that is to give that lead back. But we can't do any of that unless we're willing to go through the wound. And unless we're willing to look at the thing under the thing and go, that happened. And once we do that, we have an alchemical process. But here's the thing. Before we can just give that lead back, we're going to take that, we're going to reach in, we're going to grab the Excalibur, the sword, out of the stone, okay, which is going to release a lot of energy, right? And that's going to make him a king eventually. The worthy one will be able to pull the sword, the truth. The sword is symbolic of the truth. So if you ever see in mythology, the sword represents truth.
The sword also is there for cutting, isn't it? So you're dividing, you're making a decision and us to decide is to cut.
Wheat from the chaff, right? Wheat from the chaff, and the truth can hurt sometimes. All right. So how we wield that truth, once we've discovered that truth, how we wield it becomes part of the mastery. Right. So you could have your truth in your scabbard symbolically, walk around the place and you will have a certain energy that you have the truth with you. You have your truth. You know who you are. And that becomes a very powerful and potent, the return home. We come to that in a minute. But once you've taken that and you pulled the enormous release of energy is an experience of tapping into and releasing grief. So once we've got rid of that shame, we've acknowledged it, gone through a process of giving it back, we're releasing so much grief, and there's an outpouring of energy, and emotions are energy in motion. That's the natural state of emotions. The unnatural, dysfunctional state in society is often projected on us because people don't feel comfortable experiencing emotion sometimes. Yeah. Is about repression and suppression. That's not the natural state of emotions. For them to be experienced as a feeling in our body, so we feel them, that's a feeling, it's different to emotions, feeling, so we feel something, and allowing tears to come, sadness, is the process of the action of processing sadness, and sometimes that's grief.
Yeah,
and
in kind of the Western world, to a certain extent, we use the words of I have depression, I have anxiety, I have post-traumatic stress. So that adds also to that stuckness. So they're giving that weight, or they're making a intangible thing tangible by adding how that word is utilized and used.
Yes, languaging is absolutely at the center of this game. The healing game, okay? And this is another mythological symbol here. Sorcery, okay, that's where you connect with source. That's what sorcery is. That's the divine truth. But also, spelling, casting spells, is what the lawyers do in modern times. With their languaging, they can incarcerate somebody or free somebody, right? Even though the same crime may have been committed. But with languaging, okay, they can affect the material world.
Well, there's also doctors who can say, "Oh, you've got 6 months to live."
Placebo effect is all about that, right?
Well, there's studies with absence in workplaces, and one of the worst things you can do is give somebody a long-term fit note or sick line. They used to call them a MIDI, because you would know that the minute you've got a line from your doctor that says, actually, you're off for the next 12 weeks, there's no way that person is going to see themselves as recovered or returned before that 12 weeks is up, because somebody who supposedly knows has told them how long they're going to be ill for. It's one of those beautiful things about why animals seem to recover so effortlessly and so much quicker. They don't know they're not meant to.
Yep. That's correct. That's exactly it. So that's illustrating my point about languaging. And so whether we're aware of it or not, we're all creators in our own right. And depending on the frameworks that we are inhabiting, the philosophies that we have, psychology is just philosophy. That's all it is. And so depending on the philosophy that you're inhabiting at the time, then what we have to deal with then is a sense of the feelings that were being invoked in our interaction with the world. So if fear, anger, jealousy, if we're feeling those emotions, we're going to then, depending on our level of training, interpret it with our brain, and our thought patterns are going to interpret the feelings. And we interpret them, and then we speak them, and then we act them out, and then we're manifesting our reality. Okay. So if we have a certain philosophy that life's always happening to me, I've got no luck, I always forget names, yada, yada, yada. What you're doing is you're reinforcing this reality for yourself, and then you manifest and live into that reality, and then it reflects back at you. Everything that's in your reality is because of you. Now, that's a real tough pill to swallow, in particularly if you've had a really rough entry into this planet in those first 18 years of life. And that's really hard to get our head around, okay? Because things happen to us that God knows they should never have happened to us. But there is a point that we reach in our healing, and it's a symptom of healing. And that's never really spoken about, symptoms of healing. We have all of these symptoms of ill health, but what are the symptoms of healing? Well, the symptoms of healing is one where you can understand these concepts at a higher level and can express in certain languaging that you are the creator of your reality and life is happening for you, not to you. Those are the symptoms of healing, and it's noticed in languaging. So, I'll stop there because, as Jake Clark says, if you ask me the time, I can tell you how to build a clock. So I've got to be careful.
Well, I think a lot of what we're talking about is very similar to the conversations with Sydney Banks, which is that sense of universal truth and universal beliefs, and that we are more than our experiences. We are separate from our experiences, but our experiences layer over the top of that, and sometimes we get a bit confused between the two. So, in terms of the Save a Warrior program, how would people get in contact with you if they were interested in attending, and what's the level of commitment then in terms of the process for that?
So we've got the social media platforms, there's our website, where our home ground, sort of like home and away in terms of football ground. We're very comfortable in LinkedIn. And we've got some very good conversations going on there via direct message and our LinkedIn business page. So do check us out and just start that awareness piece in yourself. And there may be us, like myself earlier on, I was saying that, you know, it was a drip feed of moving into Save a Warrior. It's the same thing for everyone else. There's this build up to the building up the courage to hit the button, to press the submit button for sending that form. And that may take 5 minutes because it's like, I get it. Or it could be a year and a half until that, like, I get it moment comes. And we recognize that and understand that. I look back at myself a year and a half ago, and I wouldn't have engaged with Save a Warrior Online really if I hadn't sort of just slowly been in that, built up slowly the permission within myself to actually engage with it. So yeah, it takes time, but you know, our website's a good bit of kit. It's got a lot of detail in there and a lot of information. So for even those that don't want to, don't need to sit the seat, but wanted to support, they can do that as well. It's all in there. And yeah, so the website, www.saveawarrioruk.org, that's the main hub for SOAR. But it's having conversations like this. And whilst Adam is certainly the spiritual leader and the guy with all of that Jungian knowledge, you know, I probably see myself as like the average Joe guy, just sort of in this piece, sort of trying to translate it in my own way and understand it. But it's, and I think that's a great sort of like tag team within this. The hardest thing I've found online communicating this thing of Save a Warrior is the fact that people they haven't sort of uncovered that need. You know, something happened and maybe they haven't got that, they've not got the courage to actually lean in and deal with it because it's hard and it's bloody horrible. And when you start to lean into it, things like belly crying and yelling come out, and all of this turmoil comes out, and that's hard, and we're not going to do that, right? So I'm just going to sit back here and refuse to call and just sit where it's comfortable. And I know that even though I'm destroying relationships with my actions and my words, and I'm drinking heavily and spending all of the money that I haven't got, or I'm going out on a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday night as well, and just, you know, getting completely wrecked off my head. And even though I know that I'm doing all of this damage to my body by smoking and driving a bit recklessly, even though I know I'm doing all of those things, I'm fine. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with me. I don't need to go to a suicide prevention program or do any healing, even though I know I'm doing all of this damage to my body. Healing's hard. Staying where all of that drama is, that's easy.
You know, there's a lovely quote. It's one of my favourite quotes, and it's going to seem like a very strange person to quote because it's by Anais Nin, but it actually sums up that perfectly. And the quote is, "The day came when the risk to remain tight in a bud was more painful than the risk it took to bloom."
Yeah, that's it. You know, I had to bottom out, you know, to coin phrases from the anonymous groups. And it was probably not as a violent bottoming out as some others, you know, because I recognized where I was going. But you know, I had that courage then to sort of like, you know, say to my wife that I'm in trouble here, help. But for some of it, forgive me, there's quite a long timeline of me imagine my journey through bottoming out as sort of like just skipping along my arse on the floor over the period of about 25 years. And, you know, every time going a little bit deeper and a little bit deeper and never really coming back up to where I started until the point where it was like, I've destroyed enough relationships now. I'm about 25 kilos overweight where I shouldn't be. And all of these things. And I was like, I'd made a very good mess of things, but I still felt like I was fine. So it's really hard to sort of like put that message across to people online because we're so quick at thumb flicking through just stuff, you know. Give me some more of that. Flick through. Oh yeah, cat video. Oh yeah, car crash or whatever it is. Just getting that hit, and it's not actually going in, and that's the hardest thing because we can see people out there chinning this off, and we know that they are actually in need of this. And that's the hardest thing to sit here and know, seeing another beacon alert coming up on LinkedIn.
Yeah,
It kills me. I could burst into tears now thinking about the chap that I'd reposted this morning because I know he's out there somewhere and we could help him.
But I think that skimming is something that a lot of people do. I think, you know, I've certainly been there as well, and it's almost like there comes a point where each time we bounce, we create a new baseline of normal. We go, so I'm okay. I can do this. And it's almost like we wear that as part of the proof that we're okay.
Yeah.
But we've forgotten what okay truly actually is because it's been so long since we've been there. It's something that is no longer within our immediate memory. So we don't recognise at that point exactly where we are.
Yeah. You said injury earlier on. You know, usually with an injury, there's some form of scar or residual sort of like immobility. I had a shoulder surgery, symbolically kind of in this sort of like in my hero's journey. We're all on one. We all have one, and sometimes more than one in a lifetime. You know, I went through that cut. I had to have that cut piece there, and then heal from that, and then return back to full fitness. You know, there are all these sort of, and that was a distinction that Adam pointed out to me. I didn't know that. You know, I didn't know anything about the hero's journey before I sort of stepped into this world. I didn't know any of this. And it's all just words put into a different order and someone sort of telling it in a different way. So until we break the algorithm of life, of people's psychology and understanding of this thing, and presenting our information in the right way for that individual, we'll have to come up with 1,000 different ways to tell the same 20 words, you know, for example, to make it fit that individual. And that might be a video, that might be a PDF, that might be something, but it might actually be standing on a street corner with a board on the front and on the back saying, like, come and talk to us. Like, I'm here right now. How are you feeling? You know, that, and we've seen those videos online. They're really effective. So we've got to come at this from 1,000 different angles. But right now we're choosing the podcast. You know, this is an angle because we've got to tell people that you don't have to suffer with the shit that's going on in your life. You know, you can choose to work through that painful period of coming to terms with it and getting complete with your past, and then feel lifted for the rest of your life, providing you do the work afterwards. You know, it's not a magic pill like, I'm done. There's a lot of hard work which takes daily practice. And, you know, some people chin it off. And guess what? That drift comes back and grabs them. But they're always welcome back, you know. So providing you just pick up that work again and do that work, you know. It is a cure. But you've got to be ready for it, and you've got to be ready to put down the poison that's making you sick, whatever poison is, for the person. And for me, it was drink. For me, it was lying. For me, it was overtraining, going out for long 25-mile runs and chinning off my responsibilities at home. It was going bushcrafting for 3 days at a time and chinning off what I should be doing. For people, it's different things. So,
yeah.
There we go. Tube.
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't it? I was going to say something, but I can't remember now.
Sorry, mate.
Yeah, that's right. So, yeah, there's a lot of people who may have heard that, right, it's such a long waiting time for this, or they've been through such and such a program before and it's very prescriptive. But like yourselves, what we do is very quite modular and very individualistic, that works for that person rather than our way of working. So we're not prescriptive like yourselves. Yeah. It's all about us modelling how you work and how you operate and how your system is.
Yeah. I think the important part of these conversations is keep looking. Keep looking until you find what works for you, because where you are is not where you have to remain. There is always an option to move beyond where that is. I was having a conversation with somebody about the nature of time, and it struck me that there is really only one direction, and that's forward. We just sometimes aren't aware of it. We forget that. But even if we're standing still, we're still technically moving forward. We can't not move forward. It just might be so slowly that we're not aware of it, but we're still moving. And I think that's about these conversations here as well, and I'm going to reiterate it, where you are right now is not where you need to stay. And it's a matter of keep looking until you find what clicks and what works with you to get that momentum going, to get that movement beyond where you think you are, because there's more. There's much, much more. Yeah. And it doesn't have to be the same old.
If I may highlight what you just said there as well, in that search for what works. We can say it with words quite easily, but actually the experience of divulging one's pain and it then nothing changing, that's a very painful experience. Mm-hmm. To go into these different things and finding, it's just the same, different, better, more, that really is a very frustrating journey to go on, particularly if you've waited 8 months through one particular modality, right? Because of op courage and, all the rest of it, waiting. And then you get there and it's like, you've got so much anticipation for it. And then it's like, the same again. So what I do want to highlight is, and look, I'm not saying we're for everyone. I'm not saying that. I am not. That we have a very, very high success rate. 99.6% of those that come to us are no longer suicidal, right? That's one anecdote, one data, not anecdotal, but one marked, tracked, verifiable, evidence-based data point. But it is about a transformation. We are facilitating a transformation. Your world is spinning in a particular direction when you come to us, and it will spin in a completely different direction. Now, that's a transformation. That's going from a human doing to a human being. Now, most of us are human doings in modernity. And very, very rarely do we just take account for what does it mean to be a human being in this moment right here, right now. Be with all of that you previously couldn't be with. That's a human being. And that experience is transformational. So, that is what we offer is the possibility of transformation. And so, but I just want to also acknowledge the struggle of those that are out there constantly feeling like they're banging their head against a brick wall, frustrated. That's hard, and what we offer is hard as well. Just choose your hard.
Mm-hmm. I would agree. I think sometimes when you're almost in the churn of being pushed through the same routines time and time again, it is brutal. It is soul destroying. It sucks the.
It's helplessness as well, isn't it?
Is it? Because you're thinking, I've been here before. This hasn't worked for me. But I think that's again is the core part of these conversations. Say there is more. There is different. It doesn't. That the same old does not work for everyone. Step beyond that.
My CBT therapist that I went through 16 or 17 weeks of it, very qualified in a field, lovely human being, but did not get me, didn't understand, didn't know who I was, didn't know what I'd been through, didn't understand what soldier was, didn't understand anything prior to that point. And in terms, her speciality would have been like that single event of PTSD event, right? But when you've got this pancake layering of lasagna of like 14 years of things and events on top of an adverse childhood experience, life from 0 to 18, I'm a 9. I'm not my score. For some that will make sense. Okay. She didn't get it, and I got that around about week 6. She just keeps asking the same questions. She's not. She didn't have the courage to ask me the questions about before that. And all I did was itch this raw nerve of what I thought at the time was it was Iraq, it was Afghan, it was these things, because I was lying to myself about what happened. So I didn't have the awareness then at that point that actually it was earlier than this, and my story was true to me at that time of Iraq, Afghan, rockets, blah, all of those stuff. If she'd have had the courage to go, all right, let's talk about that. Let's go back to there. Maybe it'd have been a different outcome for me. But I think, shortening this down to a bit, there will be people that have gone through the CBT and all of these other very effective models that do help, but they don't fix it. They don't, wrong word, not fix. They don't
resolve.
They don't get to the thing under the thing. They don't actually address the root rot, the foundational core of why I was what I was. And we have the courage to go there.
Yeah.
With
and
full
unfortunately,
compassion.
and unfortunately, Thomas, you're not the only one. We got a friend of ours who was telling us about a young counsellor, and she was sent to a police force to deal with all their stuff they go through. And the police force hadn't told her what to expect from these guys. She was newly qualified, and she got traumatized through hearing about what police officers had gone through.
Yeah, and that's all the bit. Everyone in Sabre Warrior, okay, in terms of delivery, has sat the seat. Okay, so there's lived experience and there's a very good understanding of what it actually means to sit on that seat and what you've got to physically go through in order to be stood there and have the honour of serving in Sabre Warrior. There are people scrambling over themselves in America to be a shepherd, to come back in service for others and, serve the individual that's had that courage to come and sit on that seat. Gosh, I've got goosebumps now thinking about our next cohort, and being able to sit there in silence and just watch this man bear all and go through that thing and come out the other side alive, full of aliveness and love. And I can't wait to see that. And I know it will happen. I know it. I don't believe it. I know it.
And
if I may, just want to address anyone that may be on the fence in hearing some of the things, and I want to address them directly right now. Two things. There is nothing in the 2,350 odd people that have gone through Sabre Warrior. Okay, there is nothing that we have not heard that we cannot hold. We will hold that for you. And when I say there is nothing we haven't heard, trust me, we have heard some of the most horrific things that people have experienced that no human should experience. We can hold that. That's the first thing. Second thing is, the second guy through the door of the Bin Laden raid, Navy SEAL Team 6, right, sat in the seat, We have his boots. He donated his boots to us of that raid. We have them. If it's good enough for him, it's good enough for you. He got his healing, okay? And so just for those that are in doubt, because sometimes our stories become very personal, very special to us. And they give us significance to a certain degree. We hold on to them because we don't really know what we are without it. Who am I without my story? Well, we have the courage to hold that, and for you to come full circle to realize that you're so much more than your story. And so bring it all. You know, we've come back for you, and that's the message I want to get across.
Mm-hmm. And I'll just reiterate what you're saying, Adam, is in the military community, we have this thing where, you know, there's like a battle back centre up in Telford Way. The British Legion, they run that. People won't go there because they don't think they're worthy enough. They don't think their injury's severe enough. They don't think all these sort of things why they're not worthy of going to that place and get rehabbed. And this goes with along with a lot of other organisations, charities, what you are worthy of going, even though you may not have the worst injury on the planet. Your experience may not be the worst on the planet, but it's your experience, it's your injury. You are worthy of going and attending on these courses.
Yeah.
100%.
So, thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining us today. It's been a lovely opportunity to have that conversation with you. We will make sure that the contact details for Save a Warrior are in our show notes and on our social media. And we're looking forward to hearing how that cohort goes. And we can't wait to see that. We're really pleased.
And finally, where is your cohort being hosted?
Adam.
Yeah, it's in a place called Cabilla in Cornwall, very close to Bodmin, and that's where it'll be.
So spend time in a beautiful part of the country and come away with a whole different experience of life going forward. Sounds amazing.
It's a sanctuary. Yeah, nature definitely plays her part in that process as well. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thanks.